Here it is from a different angle. It's a half a bicycle length, but that's all you need. Matty Goss there in third position. The big names, formerly, strangely enough, those three riders at one time were all on the same squad, the great HTC squad. Call it High Road, call it HTC, call it Columbia, whatever the structure of the team was for many years. It was the biggest and most prolific winning team on the international circuit for many, many years.
Welcome back to another episode of Between Two Wheels podcast. This is your host, Tyler Janke, coming to you with Chris Flower. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. It's Friday afternoon, which is always a good thing.
It is.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. And we're missing one. We're not even Skyping with our main man, Curt.
Disappointing.
It is. Truth be told, I think we dug back into some of his old tweets. You know, this happened with Kevin Hart. He's now no longer going to be doing. Same with Curt. Back into some of his old tweets. Today on Strava, to a well-known rider around, he put a nasty tweet comment on there, and I banned him from the show for that. It was to me, actually.
I think that's a well-earned ban. I think he needs a timeout.
He did. He commented on one of my rides. He put, "Stupid ride, idiot." Which was
he right?
In his defense, of course.
Okay.
It looked like someone who's just lost in their own neighborhood, which is pretty much how I ride. Anyway, welcome everybody. Between Two Wheels podcast. We're gonna do a little. I don't know. It's the winter. It's the off season. You've been riding. Well, let's go back to you. Have you been riding much?
I started riding a little bit this past week with the intent to try and salvage some of the winter. I feel like the winter here is so short as it pertains to cycling because, I mean, the first NCNCA race is 3 weeks away, 4 weeks away.
Bruno?
Yeah. And then after that, I mean, the real crit would be what, Cal Aggie, and that's 7 weeks away?
Yeah, in January still.
Yeah, so. I'm hosed.
Well, there's not a lot of climbing there, so...
There's not, but it's technical.
Right.
I don't know. I started riding a little bit on the trainer this week. We did a lunch ride this week as well.
Yes, we did.
It sounds like there's an interest in riding like 500 miles this weekend, so we'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, I did took some time off and back into riding now.
Well, let's talk real quick about what the ridiculous thing that you did this last week. California International Marathon is out here in Folsom.
Yeah.
It's a 26-2 full-on marathon, goes to the capital, and you did it. You're like, oh, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, have you been – I know you run a little bit, but I didn't know you were running.
I did a little bit of training leading into it.
Describe that. I mean, this is like me getting ready for a road race probably, right?
Right. It was I intended to make a genuine effort at it and started kind of plotting out some kind of running plan back in August. And like any good person who's getting ready to go into the off season, I really didn't follow through with much of the training. I would do a few miles after work here and there. And then in like early November, did a few longer runs on the weekend, 12, 13 miles, something like that. And then we had that campfire. And that just really kind of threw any outdoor running out the door, so to speak, and didn't do a lot of training. So I didn't really go into it in the greatest condition and not that well prepped. But I figured I signed up for it. It starts a mile from home. It's, just a kind of fun endeavor. So I just took a shot at it.
The question is, did you run to the start?
I actually did not. I considered doing that, and then I woke up really early, and it was cold outside, and that just seemed like a terrible idea.
Did you drive, or did your wife take you? Or?
I drove to Old Town Folsom and walked across the bridge to Coffee Republic and jumped on a shuttle that took me up to the start. So it was every mode of transportation possible I utilized. So.
And you finished.
I did, yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank you. It was fun. I enjoyed it. It went a lot better than I thought it would. I kind of had some goals in mind, and I missed one of them, but I achieved a couple others. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. So
all right. So the title of this podcast will be Chris Tapes His Nipples and Runs 26 Miles.
I didn't have any issues with that. I was surprised. No cramps, no blisters or anything. So just ran out of juice in the last few miles.
Well, congratulations either way. It's something, it's not even on my bucket list because I'm not really that interested. All right, so back to riding. Coming up, we're going to do the Tour of California race route was announced, so we'll go over that. Sad news in the world, Paul Sherwen dies. Some Strava numbers, things that make you go, I don't know if there's a little bit of transfer market. The NCNCA 2019 race schedule is out, so we'll go over some conflicts there. Just give you a quick one, and then some winners and losers maybe. And I just want to also say we've already booked next week's. We're going to have a guest. We're going to start trying to do some of those this winter. So it's coming in studio, and we'll have a good conversation. Mike Sayers, we'll just put it out there. So those of you that want some questions for Mike, he's coming in Friday, so next week we'll talk to him and maybe throw him our direction. Maybe we will ask him, maybe we won't. But there you go.
Sounds great.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Tour of California route. So it finally got announced. They were delaying the announcement of the route, and finally came out with it. We talked about it previously with Curt, had all kinds of dark web sleuthing he had done.
I think he had the whole route.
Was he not correct? What's your breakdown of it? And it's just like before. It's just the announcements of the start and finish cities.
I think he had predicted the route would start in Northern California and move to Southern California.
Correct.
So in that regard, he was spot on. So kudos, Curt, for nailing that. I'm not sure if he really had much else. I mean, he kind of had some ideas and threw out some town names, but I don't really see any of those on the list here.
Santa Clarita, is that one he announced? No.
I don't think so. He said Solvang at one point. I think he expected a time trial in Solvang, and I didn't see that on the list.
Okay, so that's highlight. It doesn't look like there's a time trial per se on here, but the only thing that could possibly be is stage one. Maybe they'll do a prologue.
Either a prologue or some kind of time trial. I don't remember in previous route announcements if they specifically said this city's the time trial, if they just said this city's hosting a stage.
I don't remember that much either, but so why don't you break down stages 1 through 7?
For the men, we're starting in Sacramento, so stage 1 is Sacramento to Sacramento. I think in past years when we've had a sac to sac stage, they've gone either down south of the Delta or they've kind of gone out to Winters and through Davis. So options aplenty.
Or they did a prologue there.
Did they? Okay.
Which year? Maybe 07, somewhere in there. Switters had done it, as a matter of fact, that year.
Okay.
And they did right downtown, and it was a little bit around the Capitol, and then out kind of a down and back by going towards like the Yellow Bridge.
Okay.
So
do you know how long that was? I mean, enough to...
That was the year Lance got his time trial bike stolen.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Or his prologue bike.
Well, okay. He rode the same one.
Oh.
It was hard to discern, but maybe 3.5 miles.
Okay, so not enough where like a TT guy can really bank some time on the rest of the field.
No, not bank, but it's one of those. Especially, we'll go through here too. I mean, it depends on if some of these all end up, if there's possible 2 mountain stages or just one. If there's not much climbing, yes, it could be enough to win a stage race, right? But likely not. Go anyway.
All right, so Sacramento on the first stage. Stage 2, keeping it relatively local. New city on the list is Rancho Cordova is going to be hosting a site or a stage, and they're going up to South Lake Tahoe. The most likely route's going to be probably something similar to what they did last year when they started in Folsom with the South Lake.
Yeah.
I don't really see many other options for that. Starting location in Rancho, not sure yet. I'm guessing it's south of 50 in one of those new developed areas, kind of like they did for the Elk Grove finish last year.
It's maybe over where that time trial is from the canal.
I think if they would start on the canal, that would be fantastic. That would just validate any and all riding that's ever gone on there.
Right. Which we just did this last week.
That's true, yeah. We were previewing the course.
We were. Well, so Rancho, I'm in Gold River, my office, but it's basically Rancho.
Yeah,
and,
my office is in Rancho.
And yours is in Rancho.
Right.
I mean, it's right here. For us, it's going to be, pretty nice.
Definitely, yeah. I think it gives us a good opportunity to see the start. I think that's actually a Monday stage.
And by the way, I was shocked that Rancho was on there. I had no idea.
Yeah, I was too. I didn't know they were vying for that position, but well done on them to get it.
Yeah, I don't know what they did to proffer that. Maybe said, kick your business out of the town, clean it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway,
stage 3, it looks like they leave South Lake Tahoe and drive down to Stockton, and they do a Stockton to Morgan Hill stage. So I think this one, they're going to have to do some climbing. It would probably make sense to go over Hamilton on their way. So it looks like back-to-back, a couple of pretty big climbing days.
So Morgan Hill, basically San Jose,
just south of it, yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder which way they're going to be going over. If it's going to go through the portion where they Mount Hamilton over where what's his name crashed.
Squins?
Yeah. Down.
There's that, and I think there's another route that's a little further south of there that'll kick you in closer to Morgan Hill. I think it's called Metcalf Road. But they would still go over, and then they would just not take Quimby over the top. Right. Yeah. So that would be the only way to go. So it's going to be a steep climb, a descent. The only downer with it is if there's a good move up the climb, it's a longer run into Morgan Hill than San Jose.
More of a chance to bring them back. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So that could be, maybe the group will take it easy, or maybe that'll increase the potential for a sprint finish.
Well, a few years ago, I went and watched the stage 07 when they went up Mount Hamilton, then came down, and instead of going left up Quimby, they kept their way going to the northern part, a little more of San Jose, and cut through.
Okay.
And it was much more of a chase going into the finish than you've seen the last few years, because it seemed like it was a little bit more direct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
So that's stage 3. Stage 4, they're going to start in Laguna Seca and head to Morro Bay. And there's a couple options for that. They could either go down Highway 1, which I think would make the most sense, or they could kind of do a slight reverse of what they did last year when they started in King City and went to Laguna Seca, except just take some of the other side roads down the Salinas Valley. But that would include quite a bit of climbing. So I think it would make sense if they did the coast route, keep it relatively flat with the exception of a couple climbs, and give the guys a slightly easier day.
Break possibility.
And it's better scenery. I mean, the Highway 1 is a little nicer than the Salinas Valley in May.
No offense to Salinas Valley.
Hey, I grew up down there. I know what it looks
All
like. All
offense to Salinas Valley.
Exactly. Then once they're there, then we get into stage 5, which starts in Pismo Beach and heads to Ventura. So this is where Curt's prediction may partially come into play, because the route would probably take them through Solvang. Not a time trial, but at the very least they'd be passing through the town and waving high. I'm not too sure what the route looks like as you go through that direction. You've got to get over some hills at some point. So it looks like it's another one where there might be a smaller group coming into the finish, unless they somehow are allowed to take Highway 1 all the way down. And then that happens to coincide with stage 1 for the women, who do a Ventura to Ventura stage. And again, like the Sacramento to Sacramento, I'm not sure if that's going to be a prologue or a circuit race or a TT or what, but that's the kickoff for the women's 3-stage stage race. And then
that's so last year when we went to Elk Grove, that's what they did, right? They did a point-to-point or a circuit, right?
They kind of did a little circuit in town.
Because we saw them take off.
Yeah, but then they headed out and did some loops around and finished.
Yeah. And it looks like similar to what they're doing here.
Right.
Because they're finishing in the same town as the gentleman.
Yeah. And then that brings in stage 6, which could be a big stage for the overall Ontario to Mount Baldy. So obviously going to be quite a bit of climbing there. I think quite a few previous editions of the race have been kind of decided on that stage. And then the women actually for the first time, I believe, are going to be doing the same Ontario to Baldy. Whether it's an identical stage or just something very similar, I'm not sure yet. But they seem to be, or at least Katie Hall seemed pretty excited at the prospect of doing Baldy.
Right. So they may not do the full, because I know when they've done out to Baldy, there's some detours and they take some extra climbs.
Right. Yeah.
The women might take a shortcut for that, because that might be a little bit more on the scale of, well, they would be too much for them. But Baldy itself, pretty intense. So
yeah,
that's
definitely
similar to last year, South Lake Tahoe, finishing up there at Heavenly. Nice big climb up the backside. So I mean, there's no other Baldy. That's a finishing climb. That's just there's no doubt about that.
Right. It just may cut out some of the earlier kind of mid-stage climbing.
Right. But I mean, that's we've seen Alaphilippe win there. That's when Sagan was able to hold on and win.
Yeah.
We've seen Levi win there, beating Horner, who ended up winning that. Then Talansky was the last time they were up there over George Bennett, who ended up winning the overall. But Talansky had the win before he decided to swim, bike, run.
Moderately well.
I didn't say anything about how well.
Okay.
That's what he's doing.
And then, so I think that'll be the big stage for the event. And last stage 7, is Santa Clarita to Pasadena. Women do the same, Santa Clarita to Pasadena. Again, not sure on the routes, but I think in the past this is kind of looped around from Santa Clarita to Pasadena, done a few loops around town, and then had the finish there in Pasadena proper. So looks like all in all, pretty cool series of theoretical stages that should make an interesting race.
Yeah, and so we have the climb at Baldy. It's going to be the decision maker.
Yeah,
because you can have multiple minutes, and we've seen that where you can have a minute on someone, really good climber. South Lake Tahoe, if they do anything, I don't care what they do before, if they do that backside again.
Yeah.
That could rip it apart.
What is that climb? I always forget.
Something grade.
Right, exactly. But yeah, that's where Bernal last year just went nuts.
Right, and he went nuts, and it was brutal.
Yeah,
and put in. Matter of fact, that ended up being more decisive. Well, the combo of everything, but they equal things out with after the time trial with TJ from the first climb.
Yeah,
which Gibraltar.
The bigger climb.
Yeah,
right.
And so this almost I think ended up being worse, and TJ looked worse.
Yeah, he had a good time trial though. So
right.
So kind of my thoughts on looking at this set of stages. It'll be dependent upon who actually comes out to race. Is Bernal going to try and repeat, or is he going to do the Giro? I don't know. But it looks like it'd be a good opportunity for him to repeat from last year. With TJ going to a new team, a more American-focused team, it may be his target race. So early thoughts, but I'm not sure how it's going to shake out.
Yeah, and it's always interesting. Like I was just thinking of the women. Katie Hall was on media today and saying that she's really happy about this, as she should be.
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking, I wonder if people looked at last year's, they see this climb. There were some major climbers that did the tour race and the Giro for the women. It'd be interesting to see if some of those were to come out, just because it's the sad part is it's 3 days. It's probably not worth it for him. So she has a really good chance of defending, but targeting that race, get some other great women out here. Really good.
She's on a new team this year too, or next year. So it'll be a good opportunity for her to lean on that support. Yeah.
She went to the team she mocked.
On
this podcast. Okay,
that's okay.
Yeah, so Bernal, as always, I'm excited about this for multiple reasons. We're going to do our thing and cover it here. We're going to get a climbing day, hopefully here, the one down in Baldy, and full day in Sacramento. So,
have you heard when they're actually going to release the actual routes?
I have not heard that, and I was trying to remember when it was last year. It's usually a few month or so before. They have to start letting people know. But.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments about what you saw there?
No, surprises? I just think surprises. Like you said, Rancho Cordova getting a start. It's kind of an odd one. Right. It was interesting reading the breakdown of the city on the media release. It's like all the things they're leaning on aren't in Rancho Cordova.
Yeah, we'll give some of them because they're pretty.
I think it was Prairie Hills or Prairie City Off-Road Park, which is I think that's technically in Folsom,
right?
Or Slough House, one of the two. I think they leaned on the Hatchery, which is in Folsom. And then I think kayaking on the American River, which is like you said, it's in Gold River here. So it's come to Rancho Cordova and do all these non-Rancho Cordovan things.
Right. They have a Chipotle. There's a Habit Burger. There's a few other places. And
there's a Lowe's shopping.
There's
mart.
Mather. There's a golf course over there. I wouldn't suggest it, but
yeah.
No offense to.
I think that's technically in Mather.
You know what? Last year we made some comments about Elk Grove.
Yes.
And ended up being one of the better start-finish / ones of the cities that we did. It was really good reception. Other than getting abused by the police, it was pretty good for us.
But I think, to be fair, our cross-section was pretty slim. I think we went to 3 places.
Two or three.
Right.
Yeah. Once again.
But no, it'll be cool to have it local. We get to see Sac. We get to see Rancho. We could even go see Stockton if we want. So it's cool to have all those kind of right in our backyard.
Right. Right.
Cool.
Totally agree. So on a sad note, because we watched the Tour of California. Phil Liggett, Paul Sherwen have always been the announcers. Sad news this last week. 62-year-old Paul Sherwen dies. Former pro, longtime cycling announcer. Has wife, 2 kids, and pretty bad news. I mean, those of us who are just connect, and I wrote a kind of a little thing about him, and maybe I'll just record that as a separate thing because it's kind of a memorable thing. I'll say this about it. This is what's so interesting is I got a little tired of Phil and Paul as announcers lately. And part of that is just you change. You've had the same ones. It goes over and over. But when you really think about it, growing up listening to baseball on the radio, I really enjoyed that. How do you feel those times? Vin Scully talking about all kinds of stuff in the middle of swings and stuff. You've got to feel time. It's got to be even worse for cycling. There could be even more hours and more bore. So, tends to whatever. And we get tired and all these. But for me, it was a lot of remembrance of, this is what got me into cycling, was these two. I got into cycling, and it was Phil Liggett. Paul Sherwen started in 86 with a little bit of, he's still racing at the time, and then became more and more involved in like 89. And they were doing a lot of fluff pieces, but then that's right when ESPN's took over and they started to do play-by-play, and really good memories. So, it's kind of a sad. For me, it's a part that got me into cycling. It was the connection that got me this great access to the sport I love. And he dies, and I heard a lot of good things about him from other people. The people were showing their DMs of Twitter and other things of where he would message them individually, other announcers about, hey, people don't always get credit, and and he was like saying really nice things about him. So I thought that was pretty good for his character. So it seemed like too bad.
Yeah, it's definitely a bummer. Like you said, for me, he's always been the guy that I associated with cycling. Even before I got into racing bikes, I would tune into the Tour or other Tour of California type races, and that those were the two voices you heard. So it's definitely a bummer for the sport overall, because I think they did a really good job kind of conveying the sport to the general public. I mean, through them, I was able to be interested in cycling, while I suspect with some of the other guys out there, I wouldn't be as interested. And
that's actually a great point, because that's something I had mentioned last year about when I stopped listening to them, because I had the option of listening to Matt Keenan and Robbie McEwen and just others through Eurosport. Was I felt like I had outgrown some of they're always doing the intro thing to like a new cyclist.
Right.
And I felt like as American audience, that's probably fine, but I had outgrown that. I wanted a little bit more in depth. But what you're saying is exactly right. I mean, there's so many people that just, my mom, she listens, she watches, she knew who those two guys were. So
right.
Even Bob Roll, she even knew who Bob Roll was, for Pete's sake. And you know what? Kudos to both of those guys that learned how to say a lot of names over the years.
Yeah,
Jamaluddin Abdujaparov. I mean, that just rolls off the tongue now.
It certainly does. And I learned more about the French countryside from those two, I think, than any history book I've ever read.
Right. Castles,
right.
All those
it could be
World War II monuments.
Totally fabricated, but I believed it.
Well, after we've done our Tour of California here and we got the race book, you see there's a lot of stuff in there for those guys to like just spew. So
right.
Each town has all kinds of stuff around the route, and I'm sure that. And then I hear with other, Matt Keenan and some of these other ones. I think that's what it is. They're force fed a lot of that stuff.
No. It's from the heart. They know it.
Oh, I didn't say he didn't say it from the heart.
Okay.
Anyway, it will be interesting to see who they're going to replace Paul with. Because obviously I imagine Phil's going to keep going. So I don't know. Maybe you're Christian Van de Velde, who actually did pretty good, or
Roll. I can see Roll doing more. I could see Phil kind of doing less and less and less, because I think he was probably really well tethered with Paul. So I could see him kind of taking a smaller role as time goes on here.
Well, last year they had got to the point where they did Channel 4 in the UK. They did the US feed and they did the Australian feed. And then last year, Australia had removed them off the feed and was doing Robbie McEwen and Matt Keenan. But we still had him, and I think they're still doing it in Europe, maybe some South Africa or something too as well. So I don't know if they're kind of they're downscaling anyway. But anyway, speculation. It's probably not the funeral just happened. So condolences to his family and friends. Did you have any personal stories since you had been in the media yourself?
I do not. Yeah, I think when we did the Tour of California last year, I think that they were sequestered in a studio somewhere
right
on the premises where we really couldn't engage with them. But it was good knowing that they were in the vicinity.
Back in the 90s, our manager had met, I don't know if it was both of them or just, I'm pretty sure it was both of those guys at the court, what we called Core States, Philadelphia. It was the national championships, and gone out and had drinks. And they ended up inviting our team to the Pru Tour, which was Prudential Tour, and it's kind of like the Tour UK now or whatever they have. Back then, Phil was really involved with. I think they had met him over in Malaysia. Anyway, so our team got an invite for that.
Wow.
Based on some beers with, but I have some stories of that I'll tell you afterwards.
Please do.
Okay, so some things that make you go, You want to start out with a little...
What do I got? Hang on. Oh, yeah, so bummer to see that Interbike is canceled for 2019. Allegedly, it's going to be back on in some other capacity in 2020, but reports through, I think I saw it on Cycling News, is that the agency that puts it on has laid off all their staff. So they just moved it up to Reno from Vegas for 2018 to kind of reduce the size, reduce costs. And I'm guessing based on turnout in Reno last year, they decided, we're going to have to call it off for 2019. It sounds like the manufacturers and the group that puts it on said, there's smaller attendance by people. There's other ways that people are rolling products out into the market. So it just doesn't really make sense to keep doing an event of this style at this time. They suggested that they'll be back on, but it might speak to kind of a change in the market or just kind of a slowing of the sport potentially. Hard to say, but it seemed like for those that were in the industry, that was like the big event of the year, and now it's likely not coming back.
Right, and I wonder if it's necessary to do something like that with the way that you can have multimedia so easy and transparent throughout the world now. If you need this event to go, or is that a hobnob event? I
think it's the latter. Like you said, it's easier for folks to get product information out just in like Instagram or a YouTube video. I suspect you'll get it in front of more viewers that way. I don't really know anybody that's been to Interbike other than you.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it wasn't something that I know people that looked forward to it and like, I got to go to see the new this. It's like maybe some of the folks like a DC Rainmaker that reviews products wants to go see the latest trainers, but I can just go look at his website and look at all of them in one go. So I think there's other avenues that are probably better for the vendors and manufacturers to get product in front of people, at the very least get them exposed to it. Or
is it some like an auto show where there's a lot of prototype event? There's always those products out there, and it's not just products. Sometimes it's riders. It's hobnob in there. You get to see I don't know, but
is it? I've never been.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
It's a party, really. What it is. What I'm more worried about is that they have had a cross race with it every year, and is that going to be?
I would assume that's got to be canceled, right?
No, which one is it? I don't remember.
It was Cross Vegas, but I don't think they're going to...
It was hard to do it when it was in Reno last year with Cross Vegas.
It's big loops, I think. Ride down to Vegas and back one time. But yeah, I don't know if that's going to go on or if there's going to be any race associated with it.
All right. Well, bummer on that, I guess.
Definitely.
I don't want to see... My initial reading of that story was a concern that... the industry is falling off, that the industry can't even support this anymore. And I don't know if it's a lack of interest in going to see a show, or is it a lack of industry being able to, make the money?
Probably both.
Yeah, that's disappointing then.
Yeah.
So mine is Team Drops, Trek Drops. We talked about them with Curt, I think last time or time before, that they were about ready to go under. They had done a GoFundMe. They got just over 25,000 euro, I think, like almost 200 people that had volunteered some money. So I guess they're going to continue. Interesting part to me is wondering, 25 euros, that's enough to keep the team going? Or is it, it was 200,000, I think, that the EF Education first got. And their answer on that was, look, this is not enough to fund the team, but it gave us an idea for a sponsor that, showed the sponsor that we had a lot of support.
Did they land any other sponsors, or was it just this supplemental funding that kind of allowed them to keep going?
Yeah, I'll have to read into that more. It's. I'm just telling stories from headlines.
That's fine. That's my style.
No, but I don't know, actually. to tell you the truth. I'll have to look back at that and see exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if it's 25,000 euro to keep the team going, then when they implement minimum wages for the riders, you can't imagine that team will be around.
Right. Well,
unless
actually,
the minimum wages are just bare bones.
It's got to be similar to EF Education. The more detailed on the article, it says British registered drops women's team has been saved thanks to a fundraising campaign, sort from offline donors and new team partners. So a little bit of all. So, that's EF Education. Once again, you're getting some crowdfunding. That obviously shows too that there's interest in the team. You could probably utilize that funding itself to, potential sponsors saying, look, so.
Right. Yeah. You can definitely use that as the launch pad to get other people involved.
Right. You had another note here, cycling versus other sports. What's your,
So, all right. So everybody's griping about cycling participation dropping. Races are getting canceled. Nobody's showing up to races. So in the past 2 years in the off season, I've done a couple other endurance style events. I did a triathlon last year and a marathon this year. And just the reception is so different in those two other events that I've done than any bike race I've ever done, where it's just, you show up to a bike race, you get yelled at by an official, you get scowls from other riders, and it's just not a very welcoming environment. I could see that being a huge turnoff for like a Cat 5 who's like, I'm going to try my hand at bike racing, and you just get a kind of bad experience. And then you contrast that to, doing this marathon last weekend. It was just, everybody was super positive and encouraging and made you feel like they really wanted you there. And I could see there being a contrast between the two where, bike racing claims to be struggling, and they really don't do much to embrace new people coming into the sport. If anything, it's kind of like a really selective club where you got to put in a lot of time to get welcome into the fold. And what does that mean? I don't know, other than it just seems like bike racing might be kind of penalizing itself by not being that welcoming of new people.
So yeah, I mean, you're more of a new cyclist to this than I am, but I remember being young. You get what we call a Cat 5 or Cat 4 mark on your calf from your chain, and people mock you and what have you, and the intimidation factor of showing up at a race as a newbie. And it's so interesting. You're a Cat 4, you look down at the Cat 5s, and as soon as you're a Cat 3, then you're mocking the 4. I mean, to me, it was even more structured like that when I was first. And so my attitude was like, I'm not going to do that when I get older. And I think things are nicer now, I think, than they were before. But Bouchard Hall, the president, CEO or whatever of USA Cycling, he's stepping down, I guess, for next year. I don't even know how this really plays into it other than just contentiousness online. I saw today, there was an auto renew thing about your USA Cycling license, and Mark McCormick, former pro, raced with Saturn and a bunch of these other teams. He and his brother both were some great cyclocross racers as well. He posts up on Twitter today that he just got his 2019 license auto renewed. And he's like, I didn't even have a license in 2018. How do you renew? Then there's all these negative comments about USA Cycling, and to me, you're talking about this run and the wonderful positive atmosphere, and I'm sure it stems from what's the attitude drifting down. And Derek had a tough haul for this because we're just assholes. Cyclists are just, a lot of them are just dicks that are in
That's true.
So it's a tough. Anyway, I don't know that I have anything really positive to put into that, other than I don't know what to do about that. Then when you show up, you encourage the younger riders. We do a lot of that with the group rides that we do.
Yeah, I think we do a good job of that.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I'm a dick otherwise.
It's other people. It's never us.
Of course. Speaking of other people, let's do a quick rundown of some World Tour transfer stuff before we hit to the 2019 race schedule. Andrea Toffi, we're just going to keep talking about him.
Is he officially somewhere?
What I saw this week was he was not on the Dimension Data roster.
But they probably can't do that until January 1, would be my guess.
Well, I think they were releasing the roster for potential for next year. I think they had released that out. So
gotcha. Maybe he'll be like a guest rider. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I saw an article last week. This is just, again, this isn't even making an assessment from a title. This is looking at a picture. It looked like one of Toffee's
third level.
Toffee's former teammates kind of came out negatively against Toffee's interest to do the race. I don't know if you saw that or read anything about that. Okay, I guess. All right, I read a little bit. I read the headline and the kind of teaser line. I guess I don't remember the guy's name. He thought it was a terrible idea because he's taking a spot away from some up-and-coming pro that could be doing Paris-Roubaix instead. And it's like, well, on one hand, that's true. But on the other hand, if it gets some notoriety for Dimension Data or whatever other team he lands on, and they can make money off that, then that's probably for the betterment of the team in the end than having a up-and-coming nobody.
Right, because you continue that stream of your team that actually can exist.
Right.
And if that's your attitude all the time, you're just going to be a development squad, which is what BMC did away with because they're like, this isn't viable.
Right, yeah.
And I mean, that's an extreme. But, there was, and I don't know the rule, but I remember Mike Creed talking about it, that like there's a Continental team or some of these, they had to have a certain amount of riders under a certain age.
As part of the Devo, or
I don't know if it was Devo or it was the Conti teams. So what would happen is think about that. The older you get, the less likely you are to be able to keep on the team because they have to always backfill with young riders. So now you have Friedmans and Carneys and these guys that are getting older, and all of a sudden they're like, well, our age is too high. We got to reduce it down. So we're flicking the older guy off the team. It seems like a weird thing to have. I remember them talking about it, but I never saw the rule myself.
Yeah, that's kind of an odd one. Yeah, interesting.
Maybe that's something we could talk to Sayers about next week.
There we go. He should know.
Yeah. Okay. Any? You had some other ones on here.
I do. So we'd mentioned earlier that Katie Hall went to Bulls Dolman. So right. Garnier, who was on Bulls Dolman, has recently signed with Tibco.
Uh-huh.
So I thought she was going to retire, and she said she was going to retire, but it looks like she's taking on a role there at Tibco. So it'll be interesting to see how she transitions back into racing, probably predominantly domestic races.
Right. So we'll see probably her at Tour of California.
And then this late in the season, if your name's coming up in the world of transfers, you're probably not in a great spot. The only other ones,
or you just lucked out and finally got that team that you wanted.
There's that as well. So the only other big name I saw was Navraduskis, who was on Bahrain this past year. He signed with Delco Marseille Prevence KTM. I'm guessing that's Conti or maybe Pro Conti or whatever the new programs are that we had talked about on the last show. I forget.
World Series of Cycling. I don't know. Yeah.
AAA, AA.
Right.
But he had a really good series of results in the past few years. He got third in Richmond, coming in behind Sagan and Matthews. Then he had some heart issues, had some surgeries, and I'm guessing performance probably dropped off after that. So good to see him get a contract. Bummer to see him have to drop a level.
Oh, or two.
Or two, yeah, hard to say. I mean, a name like that doesn't really Delco Marseille Prevence. I've never heard of them.
No, and I'd seen that headline too, and I was looking through there, and they were talking a little bit about that team, and I'm just like, what?
Yeah,
no clue.
And then
KTM, is that the bikes?
Yeah, they make bikes. Yeah,
well,
I think they make bikes for who's it? Mark Pro uses KTM bikes. Yeah, maybe he's racing with them.
This is their new team. They're selling different kind of supplements.
Yeah. Do what you can do. And then it sounds like there's a new Irish Conti team, so not Pro Conti's, mid-level, I guess, Evo Pro Racing, and looks like they're probably going to pick up a few of the riders who are doing last-minute scramble for a contract, maybe some of the Aqua Blue guys that didn't land anywhere.
Right. Well, we saw Connor Dunn had signed with someone. I'm trying to remember who it was.
Sky, I thought? I don't remember. No, it wasn't that, But
he had nabbed the team and Larry Warbass. So I think most of those guys, because I remember the owner had said there was 5 that were not under contract, or I don't know. There was. I'm trying to remember the whole situation, but it seemed like 3 of them he said he was possibly going to pay, and I think it's only 1 left that maybe didn't.
Yeah, and I think Warbass went to AG2R.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then also, it's not really a transfer thing, but today Action Cycling came out and they've. Will be terminating their partnership with Specialized and will be riding Pinarellos next year.
So I saw online a thing with local bike fitter, Bruce.
Okay.
What's the name of his company?
Athletic Camps?
Athletic Camps. Yeah, they had an action guy in there, and he was on a Pinarello, and I'm getting his bike fit for the new bike. So I did see that. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they've been partnered with Specialized for, I don't know, a couple of years, but
gotcha.
Things change.
Right. Okay, so let's get to the 2019 schedule. And what did you see on that? We're not going to go over the whole schedule. Just some idea, some races here and there, some points of conflict.
Ooh.
And
Curt's not here, so we can blame everything on him. The only big ones that I saw were I don't know if we talked about it in any other recent opportunities, but Cascade Cycling, which is not an NCNCA event, but it looks like they're claiming to be back on for 2019, late May, early June. On one hand, that's great. On the other hand, looks like Nevada City's that same weekend. So there's a little bit of a conflict there because those are two pretty popular and relatively well-attended races. Geographically, that's a bit of conflict if you want to do both.
Right, but which one has not been disrupted in the last few years? In other words, which one's more continuous?
Obviously, it's got to be Nevada City, right?
Yeah, because I mean, you can't. And I'm saying in Curt's defense because he puts this race on. Obviously,
it's true.
He is part of that. You can't schedule your race based on something that's happening, 500 miles away up in Bend. So
right, yeah, that's totally fair. And I know Curt didn't want to do Cascade, so this way he doesn't have to. Since he's got to be there to put on Nevada City and run it start to finish. It
is a bummer when Cascade is trying to revamp, and they were going to come back last year, and they couldn't quite do it, assuming that they are doing it this year. It is too bad because those are two classic races, as they both have in their name.
That is a good point. Couple races that are seeing a little bit of change that I noticed today would be the Lodi Cycle Fest is back on the calendar after being off the calendar for a couple years, and Cat's Hill, which has obviously been going on for quite a while, but they're both in April, and they're both going to be put on by Red Kite this year and incorporated into the Red Kite Omnium.
Oh, interesting.
So,
both of them in April?
Yeah.
Okay, so Lodi used to be right before Cascade. It was in June. It'd be blazing hot.
Right.
So that might be better.
I absolutely think so.
Yeah, we'll have a downpour. So it'll happen.
That's true, but it's cool to see that that Lodi's back on the calendar because I really enjoy that course, and it's been one that's just kind of run out of steam, I think, going into the season. So it's good to see somebody step in and take those on.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. We know one or two people who won't do them then.
That's true. And then I think in March there's the Winchester and Auburn, which are rolled into the Red Kite Omnium again this year.
March.
So, yeah.
Okay, so I need some serious dieting between now and March.
I think, I'm in the same boat. Maybe I'll be in shape.
We're not in the same boat. That boat's sinking if that's the case. Trust me. Springing leaks, water spilling over the side.
Right. I didn't say the boat was in water. It's dry docked. So.
Is Curt in the boat with us? He's our coxswain, the little guy in the front that helps us steer.
Right. Those are the big ones that I saw that looked like they may have had a little bit of a shakeup for 2019. Otherwise, the calendar looked more or less as it always does. Most events fell in the same part of the season.
So let me ask you this. There was a bunch of... How many races do you think were canceled or dropped after they had been on the calendar last year?
15.
Okay. Are those races back on?
Most.
Like Madera?
Yes.
Okay. So they said, hey, last year didn't work, but we're going to give them a shot. We're at least going to put them on the calendar this year.
Right. Okay. I think they added one. They added Calaveras time trial. I don't know if that's the same as the Athlone time trial that went on earlier or for the districts this year, but that is on the calendar. But yeah, all those other ones that I think dropped off are back on this season as well.
I don't know if I want to do this, but one year I went through and I did a breakdown of all of them, which months were more concentrated, heavier races in which months, and it always seems like it was March, April, May are a heavy amount, and then we kind of slim out. And so when we talked about that, when those races are being flicked out of the calendar, it's not always so bad. Maybe it's like pruning trees, right? You got to thin some out.
Definitely. Now, when you're saying you kind of saw where they were concentrated, you're talking about races or racers?
No, I did the calendar and which months were the most races in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's tough to put on a bunch of races out this way in the later months because it's just so hot.
Right. When you say out this way, you mean California?
I mean the valley versus the bay.
Gotcha.
It's just so hot, and it's not fun to race in that.
Well, I'm going to pose this to you. You wrote it down here, but
Uh-oh.
This is your question. I'm going to pose it to you. What's the over-under on the number of races canceled this year? What do you think?
I put the number at 10, and I'm guessing it's going to be over that.
So you think less? So you think somewhere around the last year, 15 races?
I think so.
Killed are going to be. Now, my hope is that you don't see I never like to see the races go, but I mean, the problem is you start having the same race 2 years in a row get canceled.
Right.
Now you're starting to see just not coming back.
Yeah, like Vacaville Grand Prix on the calendar again.
Okay.
It's been canceled, I think, the last 2 or maybe even 3 years.
Let's reg now. Make sure that oh, no.
I don't think it's available for reg yet.
Okay.
So the other thing that's on the calendar again late in the season is the Cal Cup. That's still there. I think it would benefit from a little additional promotion once you kind of get later in the year so people don't forget about it. Because I think
Is that a Velo promo?
Yes. I think there are a few folks that do target that, but I think it'd be cool if it had a little bit more hype just to get people engaged later in the season.
Right. Okay. Anything else on the calendar? So we've got Bruno Hill Climb coming up, and then Land Park, or
in between
Cal Aggie.
In between that, if you, I don't know if you've done them. There's the Velo Promo puts them on the Early Bird Training Series.
Right.
I did one of them once. It's just a bit of a trek to go race a crit in early January.
Yeah.
But those are out there if you have any interest. I don't know if I'll go, but
right. So it made me think there's team camps and stuff going on. So maybe if you've got your team doing a camp, maybe you guys can send us a message about that. We're going to start getting together our team info and letting people know what's going on, and you start entertaining us with what you guys are doing out there. We're going to do one-ish.
Are we?
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. Play golf?
Yeah, that's exactly. Let's hit a sponsor real quick, and then we'll get out of here. Health IQ. Look at healthiq.com/BTW. It helps you get lower rates for life insurance. They set you up. They're basically a company that helps search for those. So if you're a healthy, active person like we used to be, you can go out there, give them your Strava info, your race data. They come to your house. I've just done it. Just got approved from me and my wife, and good rates, good prices. They come to your house to do all this, testing, make you answer questions from like when you're born and everything else, and give you the best rates you can do for life insurance. It's a good thing you could do for your family. If something happens to you, at least they're taken care of. healthiq.com/BTW to learn more and to support the show.
So they're a broker, and they link you up with providers?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's been actually really easy, not very complicated. And it's been a good process. So they'll get our money, and then we'll go from there.
Perfect.
Any winners and losers do you have?
Winner, I'm going to go with kind of the dark horse win, which would be the city of Rancho Cordova for getting a start stage for the Amgen Tour of California.
Good call.
Yeah. I'll come back to a loser after you go through yours.
Okay. Curt sends one in here. His comment on my Strava: stupid ride, idiot.
Is that a win or is that a lose? Or is it both?
He's a loser.
Okay.
No, he's not wrong, as you said before. And even the idiot part. So I had a winner here, which you just kind of took. I'm saying that our podcast is the winner for having Rancho so close.
Okay.
We'll be able to basically in our backyard go over here.
Assuming
we get credentials again. My loser is Performance Bicycle. They have, I think November 16, they filed Chapter 11. So there's under Chapter 11, there's some reducing of stores, restructuring is basically what that is. But then there was a stay basically where the judge had put a stay on how many different stores was it? I don't remember, but that they couldn't use the sign going out of business or closing unless they were legitimately closing and going out of business. So he said is interesting. He couldn't do store closing events. He said the Gordon Brothers and ASC are permitted to promote the sale as holiday sale, inventory clearance sale, or Christmas sale. Which a side note of, I got an email today and from Perform Minutes, and it said Fair Oak store going out of business ? And then in the ad it said going out of business sale. So
maybe they're really going out of business.
Maybe they're really going out of business. ASC's CEO told bicycle retailer that none of the sales should be seen as a direct indication that specific stores will close, although he expects that many locations ultimately will shut down. So there goes performance if there's one in your location. I know around here, I think there's one Roseville, Sacramento on Howe, I think. And then the one out in Fair Oaks. So
yeah, that's a bummer.
Right.
I think that kind of coinciding with the Interbike getting canceled is, I don't know if that's the greatest sign for the bike scene.
Maybe not. What do you got? Any losers?
How about I don't really have much. Interbike getting canceled. That just stinks.
Yeah, well, as someone you said you've never gone, I could see you're heartbroken over it.
It is. I'll never get to go.
I saw a picture today. Inner Ring posted it out, and I'm trying to remember which year it was, but it must have been early '80s. You could just tell by the bikes. But Charlie Motte, I think, was there. Clavarola. So that's around when those guys were racing, and it was the Dauphiné Libre or the Criterium du Dauphiné, whatever they call it now, and they were doing gravel. His picture was awesome. He goes, there's so much going on here. There's gravel. There's 2 yellow jerseys. There's a mullet. And you're like, yep, there's a mullet. 2 yellow jerseys. I guess one was like a points competition. One was the yellow jersey. And they were doing gravel. Huh. So even back then, and I know everyone thinks that gravel was just invented.
Right.
But no, it's been around a while.
And of course, they were doing it on the gravel bikes with really wide tires. And they weren't doing it on like 20 mil tubulars, right? No, that's not possible.
Yeah, I think back then when you had just literal toe clips,
right,
it was a little too hard to adjust that. But they've been doing that for a while. So, and mullets have never gone out of style, evidently. Anything else?
They've never come into style.
That's probably the easier way to say. Anything else you got for us this week?
Not right now. No.
Okay. Well, we're going to close up shop here. I got to move some furniture because they're going to come clean our carpets this week. We got painted last week. Carpets this week. And so next week, tune into we're going to have a guest in with us, Mike Sayers. Most of you might know who he is. Not, well, stay tuned and you'll find out. Episode 93. Thanks for joining us. Between Two Wheels Podcast. Find us on Twitter, B2_podcast. Facebook, Between Two Wheels, the number 2 podcast. Anywhere else that you can find this podcast. Like us, make a comment, good or bad, doesn't matter. Rate us, review us, and share the show. And Chris, thanks for joining.
Happy to be here.
Curt. Okay, he's not doing that. All right, we'll see you later. Bye.
See you.